welcome to the Grit and Grace podcast. I'm so glad you're here listening today. I pray this episode finds you well and blessed in the Lord. Today, I have a new guest for you who has a truly engaging story to share. Her name is Elle McBride, and she is a Christian trauma-informed specialist. She's an industry leader in trauma-informed care and self-belief building. She shares her expertise through coaching, speaking engagements, writing, and podcasts. You can find out more on her website, ellouisemcbride.com. She has a Facebook. Her Facebook is facebook.com/Elle McBride Official. Yeah, Elle McBride Official. And her Instagram is Elle Louise McBride, and she's also on YouTube, Elle Louise McBride. So, and we'll mention some more of these sites and stuff as and how to get a hold of her as we near the end of the broadcast. But Elle has empowered countless individuals, to overcome self-doubt, manage stress, and carve out their own paths to healing and personal growth. She's here today to tell us a little bit about that and how she does that, and to tell us some of her inspiring story. Elle, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled, and hello to all the listeners.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm Elle. I'm from Australia, specifically the Gold Coast in Queensland, and I am a proud dog mum. I'm a Chihuahua mum to a 2.5-year-old called Jaira, who is just my best friend. We live by the beach, and Australian living is pretty wonderful, I won't lie.
Oh, I imagine. I mean, I was just sitting there daydreaming as you were explaining it. I know my husband and I have always wanted to go visit there for some reason. And so that's kind of, it's our bucket list. So, but that sounds amazing. I can imagine. So tell us a little bit more about what you do. A little further in, we'll get into more of your story and what inspires you, what you do. But what exactly is a trauma-informed specialist?
Yeah, so I have been working with a bunch of different holistic modalities for a long time, which has led me through a lot of different studies. I'm most commonly known for a modality called the Havening techniques. And the Havening techniques is it's a revolutionarily new psychosensory therapy. So similar to if you've heard of EFT or EMDR, but it's very heavily based in neuroscience, which I love, and it's a neutral technique. So it's not based on any religious beliefs or thought patterns. So it's a beautiful way to just re-regulate the nervous system, as well as change the way that we perceive different threats. So it is a hands-on technique, which if I'm one-on-one with a client, I can facilitate the touch of the client, can facilitate the touch of themselves. So I work with people all over the world. And it's very similar to if a child was to fall over and hurt themselves, they would run up to their caretaker, and their caretaker would hold them in their arms and kind of just stroke down their arm, or maybe wipe away their tears and stroke across their face. And we know that through this sensory touch, this input, that it alters our mood and our behavior. And so in most cases, when working with a client, if they have gone through a past trauma, or they're really having difficulty navigating through emotions, I use this alongside Bethel Sozo ministry and a bunch of other modalities that have really supported. But this is my most commonly known one. It's been developed over the last 2 decades and created by Harvard-trained medical doctor Ronald Bruton. And so it's held as a really remarkable breakthrough in the industry. But for myself, I found it because I was in a very hard place. I was struggling with PTSD for 6 years, and I know that the Lord really led me to this modality. It's now shifted in its own ways with my own experiences over the last 7 years. And so I've really created essentially my own way through that as well. But it is a truly wonderful modality that we can all do in the comfort of our own home. Self-facilitated touch. It's like giving yourself a nice cuddle, but stroking down your arms at the same time, which is producing a large amount of delta waves, and delta waves are our slowest brainwave. And because so many of us don't sleep very well, and we're not really getting that deep regulation of our biochemistry. So yes, it's a wonderful way that I get to help people. I get to help myself in moments where I need it, alongside just those standard practices that we've got.
Yeah, I found that interesting. I was reading a little about it, and so as far as EMDR, EMDR. I underwent that and found it very helpful, but I just couldn't understand. My mind couldn't grasp why it worked so well. I mean, as he's talking to you, the little buzzers you're holding. For those who aren't aware of it, you're holding little buzzers, and they don't shock you or anything. It's just a vibration. But there's something about the touch that I couldn't make the connection of why something so simple was so effective. It's not very high tech, but
yeah.
Right.
Well, what makes havening, a lot of these modalities like EFT and MDR, the science isn't there to necessarily back it up, which is why a lot of people think, oh, it's a placebo, or anything that uses those eye movements or tapping in various parts of the body. And they are wonderful modalities, but because the science is quite lacking, that's why Dr. Ronald Bruton has been really deep diving into the neuroscience about how traumas are encoded in the brain and how touch can really impact this. So Dr. Bruton discovered that there's certain responses, primarily in an area of the brain called the limbic system and the amygdala. And so there's a small set of tiny neurons at the center. And when our survival is threatened, the amygdala takes over. The amygdala is like the emotional alarm system in the brain. It's the part that is set to keep us alive. And so when this gets triggered, we have our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so what the touch actually does is, with these AMPA receptors that are sent off on our amygdala, that have become acutely aware of these, our surroundings, the smells, the sounds, and it creates a memory. The delta waves actually go in and release a chemical called calcineurin phosphate, and this removes those AMPA receptors and essentially dissolves them. So after a session of havening, whether it's 15 minutes or 2 hours, every client is so different. The individual can then recall the event happening, but no longer have the emotional or psychological reaction to it.
Right. Well, that was a very good explanation. So, and you said this is self-facilitated.
Yes. So I work with clients all over the world, and even after my first session of havening, I had walked myself, to I was visiting the Gold Coast at the time. I walked the beach, and I thought, well, what the facilitator did wasn't too hard, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to people, but I just started to use self-havening for months until I could see that practitioner again.
Huh. Well, that's, I mean, I can see the benefit in that, definitely. And you see a lot of people that you interact with that are helped by this?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're self-soothing all the time, whether or not it's a child that sucks its thumb, whether or not it's somebody that sits and sways side to side, somebody that taps on their knee or shakes their leg. We're designed to self-soothe and self-regulate. That's how God created us. We're also designed to be in community, but even post-pandemic and pre-pandemic, touch has become
Yes,
something that we don't engage in. And
right.
so we're not getting the amount of hugs that we should. We're not getting the amount of support. It's a yeah,
No,
yeah, there's
I was going to say the same thing. We don't touch each other enough,
yeah.
and you can tell by the way that the way we feel and the way that we act in our mindset. I
Mhm.
think is all affected by that. I mean, I think about this may sound silly, but I think about how good it feels like when my husband brushes my hair. Like
Mm,
if I get upset, sometimes he'll come and he'll just brush my hair because
yeah.
it feels real tingly. You know, it's a soothing though. It's a soothing, and I can see how that would help, like you said, create formulate new memories associated with the event by touching. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you got into it though because you underwent it yourself, you said, for about 6 years due to PTSD, and you found that very helpful.
Yeah, well, I found it helpful after one session. So,
Uh-huh.
a little bit about my story. I was born into a grieving family. My parents had lost a child just 1 year prior to my birth. And I believed for a long time that I shouldn't have been here, that I was living in the shadows of my brother who had passed over. And it took me a long time, and I was very depressed throughout my teenage years, um and it was a really hard start, as you can imagine. And so at 23, and I'm trying to cut this story short, but at 23 in 2013, I was in Hawaii, and beautiful place, and I had a life altering experience when I found myself drowning in the waters of Waimea Bay. And in this moment of crisis, I was coming up for a gasp of air and then straight under the water. And I just started to pray. And I wasn't raised in a Christian or Catholic home. I had been to Catholic high school. I knew who God was because I knew that my brother was in heaven. I'd lost my best friend to her mental health journey. She passed by suicide at 19 years old. And so I knew where I was going. I knew where heaven was, but I didn't have a relationship with God or Jesus. And so I just started praying to God to just look after my mum. I knew that my life was ending in this moment, but I just asked that he would take care of my mum. And I was praying, and I see the pearly gates and they start to open, and this face, this man appears. And I knew this man to be God. I just, that feeling you just know. And he says to me that my life has purpose, my life has meaning, and it's not my time to go. And in that moment, I received that message, and my arm was pulled up out of the water, and I was on the shore. I didn't need resuscitation. I was able to breathe. And it was a really significant encounter that I I think after an experience like that, you either go one way or the other, and
Mm.
you have this beautiful reflection of, wow, like everything's okay, and I'm alive. Or you go the other way where it just becomes a lot harder, a lot more questions that where you ask yourself, and essentially a little bit more pain. So I unfortunately took the later, and life got a lot more difficult after that. I ended up in Vegas about a month after this drowning experience, where I was in a big hotel, and there was a big spa bath, and a friend and I were traveling together at the time. So we were having a bath and a glass of champagne and celebrating our arrival in Vegas. And I think it was the confined space of the bath and the water where I was subconsciously triggered, and I had a panic attack. And in this panic attack, I had a lot of suppressed memories come up where I had completely disassociated for the majority of my life. And I couldn't figure out if these memories were real, if they weren't real, if they were true, if they involved this person or that person. And it brought up a lot of confusion. And for the next 5 years, I would find myself really struggling with complex memories, panic attacks, just this inability to function in a lot of ways. I ended up in a really unhealthy narcissistic relationship, and it just got to the point where, you know, I knew I had this encounter with God. I knew that my life had purpose and meaning, but there were just so many days where it didn't feel like that. And so I had been living in a few different areas of Australia, and I didn't know where I should go or what I should do. Should I turn left? Should I turn right? Should I, just stay here? And I'd been to a festival here in Australia called Burning Seed, and it's very similar to the one that's in the US called Burning Man. And I had been to this festival and had a really lovely encounter, not like my near-death experience, but probably the next thing closest to that. And so I thought, okay, maybe if I can go on a bit of a trip, I can go to Queensland, maybe I want to go back there. I can go to Victoria, maybe I want to live back there. And then I'll go to this festival and God can talk to me again. I can have an encounter and he'll tell me what to do. And in saying that, though, a part that I'm missing out is I had a lot of recreational use with drugs at this stage. It was the thing that would support me. So in my mind, I thought that if I went to this festival and got high as a kite, that then God would visit me.
Right.
And
right.
so I end up in Queensland. I'm visiting here, and again, I was going to go from Queensland to Melbourne to this festival, and I'm a couple of days in on my trip on the Gold Coast, and I get an email telling me that the festival had been cancelled. And I thought, there goes all my hope. That was where my answers were going to come. And I just remember thinking, God, why? And that night, I just ended up in a bit of a curl up on the floor. I was crying. I was just devastated. And so after that, the next day I stumble into a coffee shop and I meet a lady named Karen, and we get talking, and she tells me that she'd just been over in the UK and she'd studied in this modality called havening techniques. And I've got to tell you, I tried everything at that point. I had tried all the different modalities. I tried all the different techniques. I tried the counseling. I tried so many different things. And I was at the point where I would have gone to a festival and taken as many drugs as I needed to try and find some peace.
Right.
And here I was, with this lady, and the next day we had our session, and I went into this session and I sat down in the chair, and she said, "So why are we here?" And all I said was 3 words. I said, "When I was," and I just started to tear up. I was sweaty. There was snot. It was all going on. And essentially I worked on the memories that had been suppressed and had come up in Vegas. And about 15 minutes after this session, during the session, it went a lot longer, but about 15 minutes into the session, just this sense of peace had come over me like I had never felt before. I was able to look at this memory and recognize that, yes, that had happened, but it felt more like a movie. It didn't feel like mine. And although the memory hasn't gone, it still feels like that to this day. And so I continued to use this modality on myself. And when things would come up, when I would get triggered, when I would have anxiety, when I would sit in worry, I would just gently stroke my arms and tell myself the ABC or count to 20, some very simple distractions, and it would ease. And I re-regulated the way that my amygdala would respond to stresses. And so after this trip, I'd gone to Melbourne. The festival wasn't happening. I went back. I was living in my hometown, and I was in this relationship, which I then ended up leaving. And within 3 weeks, I'd moved, and I decided to move to Queensland. And I'd met back up with Karen Hedges, who had introduced me to havening. And she told me that the trainers were coming over for the first havening training, and she thought that I should do it. And I just laughed. I just laughed. But I need the practitioner. I cannot become the practitioner. And and she, spoke some encouraging words into me, and I ended up at this training. And now I'm the leading practitioner here in Australia and globally recognized for it. And I know that God has just been involved in it in every way. Even, I was sharing my testimony just the other day with somebody, and they said, well, about the festival, that it was cancelled, and just the reflection that, he will go after the one. And to think that he cancelled a whole festival just so I wouldn't lean upon him in that aspect. And I know that he showed up through havening. It is a hands-on modality. It's not attached to any beliefs. That's not energy work. It's not based on any form of spirituality. It's heavily based in neuroscience. And I absolutely love the work that I get to do, how I get to bring prayer into it, forgiveness. I know that with deliverance, I've had a lot of deliverance as well, and I'm very much an ambassador for that. And I think that we all need to find different things that work for us. But what I've loved so much about my own experiences, and therefore the thousands of people that I get to work with annually, is that the work that can happen through these modalities, that it works on the body. Yeah, as you said before, the body keeps the score. And so we really can set ourselves to find this sense of freedom within, due to these past memories, these struggles that happen. Havening works with on 3 different main components. So emotional disturbances and encoded psychological trauma. It can also be used for wellness and stress management, as well as peak performance. And then it's a self-help tool as well. So it's not just for trauma, although we find that a lot of stress management or fear of performance comes down to past encoded experiences. So yeah, I've been able to use it in every area of my life. It doesn't have any negative consequences. And
Right.
yeah, you can do no harm. You can do no harm.
Wow, that's awesome. And what an awesome story. I like, a part of the story that I like the most is the fact, even though it's generally not the way we would want it to go, as far as the gap that you had between the time that God told you in the water that he wanted to use you, until later, when it finally came to fruition. All the things that you had to go through in between are not the things that we like to go through. But it just goes to show that when God says something, it's going to come to pass, but it's in his time. And and looking back, he uses those things to get us to where we need to be when we walk into that purpose, when we finally do walk into that purpose. And I think that's awesome. I'm really congratulations, and I'm really for being able to do what you do and live what the life that you're living now. I'm very happy for you to have been able to overcome those things. And your story is similar to my own, even though from the onset you wouldn't think that we have a whole lot in common. But I mean, we started out with like a sense of rejection or an emptiness or some sort of wound, in ourselves, and then we seek out a way to heal that ourselves, and it's just a journey until God snatches us up, and thank God he does. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But I noticed that you have some free resources available on your website. That was EloiseMcBride.com. Can you tell us a little bit more about those resources and how the listeners can reach out to you?
Yeah. So on my website, I have a free PDF workbook that you can learn to utilize this self-havening in the comfort of your own home. It's a step-by-step process, and it's really wonderful, as well as a bunch of videos as well, so you can come and haven along. I would recommend, like with the big stuff, to book a one-on-one session with myself or another trained practitioner, using your discernment as to where you feel is best for you, and they can also be booked on my website as well.
And you have a blog also, right?
Yeah, I have a blog. There's lots of different blogs on there. I often kind of have to give myself little nudges to keep it regular, but
Mm.
really somebody that writes when the Lord tells me to write. So I've gone
Right.
through seasons where that's all I've done for 3 months.
And then
um,
and then none at all for a while. That's how I am
yeah,
anyways. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard, it's kind of hard to work that way. So you got to really take advantage of those busy seasons, and store stuff up.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so yeah, there's lots on my YouTube as well, and I endeavor to make more. My journey with the Lord in 2019, just briefly, I went to a Pentecostal church for the first time with my older brother who had found the Lord, and I remember I'd been to mass. I had gone to a Catholic high school, but I had never seen a church like this,
Oh
and
my
just
gosh.
the joy. And I thought, what is this? And I knew that there was a girl on social media that I knew quite well that, every Sunday would post a video, and I kind of clicked that her church may be similar to my brother's. And so from that next weekend when I got home, I've been to church every weekend since. And it was during the pandemic that I was at church. We were very grateful that church was still in person here in Australia where I lived. And I was at church, and I was just in such a lost place, and I was crying at the front after the service during prayer, and I just had this image of God appear, and it was the same image of purpose in my life, had meaning. And in that moment, I recognized the face, and I recognized the voice to be Jesus. And that's when I knew that Jesus was Lord, and I gave my life to him. And so, yeah, it's just so beautiful that he does pursue us, and comes after us. And yeah, now I'm so grateful to be a daughter of the highest, and yeah, to just allow this work to be a way that we can connect with our faith, to connect with the Godhead as well. And yeah, when we're more regulated, the Holy Spirit can become so much louder. Yeah, the enemy doesn't have
Oh,
a foot to stand on. And
right.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
you go to a Pentecostal church.
yeah,
Oh, me
yeah,
too. I
yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
too. Okay, okay.
Amazing. Yeah.
Well, and I love that because you know, the Holy Spirit, is so powerful, but he does lead us to other people, or like he connected you with the woman who does this technique, and connects us things and people like that can help us along the way. And so I think that's awesome that you point that out. And I like what you had to say about deliverance as well. You had a lot of exciting, interesting things to tell me today. I very much enjoyed it. Is there anything else that I'm leaving out, Elle, that you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
No, I think, yeah, I just, just an encouraging word is like, yes, there is deliverance, there is prayer, take it to the Lord. But there are with evolution, there are some new things out there. And, for myself, I have that, especially, the deeper that my faith has become, and going, Lord, like, I want to ensure safety all the time with my clients. I went during my season of healing, I tried some modalities that made things worse. I was to the point that would have gone and taken, any forms of drugs to maybe get myself back close to that place of death again to meet God. And so, for it, the hopelessness that can come when we have these, encoded memories that just create so much fear within us, that there is so much hope. And so I really hope that this audio, this podcast has really inspired at least one person. I wake up every day just going, Lord, let me impact one person or 1 million people. If it's one person, it's worth doing. And so, yeah, I really hope it encourages you. My inbox is open. Contact at EllouiseMcBride.com is my email. If you have any questions, I'm so happy to help answer them.
Amen. And thank you. Yes. I always said, with this show is the whole point is what I'm doing glorify God and help others, and if it's just one, that one is, makes all the difference, so awesome, Elle. Well, I very much enjoyed our talk. Stick around after we're done, and we'll chat a little bit more, but I do appreciate everyone listening. I just want to say a quick prayer for you guys today. I pray that this episode has inspired someone. It's inspired me, and I've learned a lot, and we'll probably look further into this. But right now, I just go to the Lord. Lord, I pray for the listeners today, that you bless them in a mighty way, that you open doors that need to be opened in their life. You heal we're in areas that need to be healed, and deliver in areas where they need to be set free, and bring wisdom into situations where discernment is needed, and just provide and see to their needs, and bless Miss Elle for coming on, and just continue to bless her efforts and touch her life. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening again, and tune in next week. This is Tonya with the Grit and Grace podcast. Bye-bye.